Hello YouTube, welcome to today's video. Today's video is going to be about how to improve with League of Legends and how to basically fix your mistakes and in which order to fix them. So on screen I have a bunch of notes when it comes to dying and trading kills in League of Legends, because this is a very big aspect of the game, especially in solo queue and especially the lower elo you are. It's not uncommon for there to be 2 kills a minute in a low elo game. And I want to define what is a good def and what is a bad def, as well as when should you be trading kills and playing aggressive and when should you be playing passively. So these will be in the description of the video as well. So in a sec I'll remove them, but you can always go back and watch them. So a good def is if you are playing a tank champion or frontline champion and you engage and start the team fight with a really big ulti, such as a 2 or 3 man Malphite ulti, and your team can follow up, then it's completely fine for you to die, because you are kind of supposed to be the person dying if anyone on the teams should die. Then another thing would be saving carry champions. So this again comes down to either these supports or top laners that are trying to save their teammate by sacrificing themselves. And this is really good in case that someone has to die, and you can kind of get to decide who is supposed to die. Is it going to be the top laner or is it going to be the AD carry? Most of the time it's actually better for the top laner to die and let the AD carry live. And this basically comes down to the fact that typically it's the carry champions that have shutdown, and if you can save a champion with a shutdown, then you always want to do that. Another thing would be trading kills that goes in your favor. So if you can trade 2 kills for 1, it's completely fine for you to die as long as you don't have a really big shutdown to trade 2 for 1, because it's worth in your favor. Another thing is if you are trading kills but you are playing a scaling champion, because if you're playing a scaling champion and you trade 1 for 1, that means that you go even, and by going even, then that means that the longer the game goes, you naturally just become stronger. So as long as you're not losing, then you're actually completely fine. So even going even is actually a win for you. And then the last thing is trading 1 for 1 if you are, this is actually when you're behind. So when you're behind, either on the solo lane or overall as a team, then trading 1 for 1 is actually good, because typically they will have a shutdown or it will simply just balance out the game slightly in your favor. Those are basically some examples of a good def. Then we have some bad defs, which would be giving a shutdown, trading 1 for 1 against scaling champions such as Kassadin. So if you're playing, let's say, Set versus Kassadin matchup and you trade 1 for 1, well, most of the time it's actually not going to be worth for you, because Kassadin is just going to outscale the Set by the time that Kassadin hits level 16. So therefore, we don't want to trade 1 for 1. Then it's better to trade 0 for 0 than 1 for 1. Another thing is that if you don't get an assist, but the enemy team gets an assist, because that simply means that you get 300 gold, but they get 450 total, because 300 for the kill and 150 for the assist. And then another bad def would be dying if there is a wave that you could be farming or a jungle camp that you could be farming instead. And then the last thing would be trading 1 for 1 when this is then supposed to say ahead, because again this typically means that the enemy team gets to scale or come back in one way or another. And then below this I have a bunch of situations that can happen, and it will explain how much gold each of the things gives. So a kill is 300, a kill and assist is 450, shutdown is between 150 to 700 bonus gold, a jungle camp is worth between 65 and 100 gold, a minion wave is worth 114, and a cannon wave is worth 180. Then you can take into effect stuff like platings and rift herald and drake and whatnot, but these are just the base things. Now let's quickly move this out of the way and then get to the actual video. So what I wanted to do is I wanted to take a look at all of my defs that I have in this game, and then I'm gonna analyze, is it a good def or is it a bad def? If it's a good def, then we kind of move on, and if it's a bad def, we need to try and figure out, well, what should we have done instead? And this is something that everyone can do. You basically just go into your match history and you download the game, and then you simply figure out, well, when is it that I ended up dying? So we do actually get a bunch of kills throughout the early game as a team. But we are about to die here to the Jarvan. So we're quickly gonna have a look. So what is happening on the map? So I have my Talia on top lane. I have Aurelia here against 3 people. I have my AD carry down here, and I have my Nami in base. So we're not really grouped up. We can't really fight. And I'm farming the Croc camp. Let's see how I end up dying. So here I actually see that before there were 3 people in mid lane, but now there's only 1 person. So we actually see them here entering my bot side jungle as 3 people. Meaning that it's actually really risky for me to walk into my bot side jungle here. So I should actually not have done this, because it's simply too risky. And then what ends up happening is, oh, they're invading me, Jarvan and Pyke. I do end up flashing out. And I actually remember this death. I wanted Nami to come fight with me, and so I could smite the Raptor camp, but she did not help me. So was this a good or a bad death? Well, this was obviously a bad death, because first of all, I should not have entered my bot side jungle after taking the Crux, because I saw them moving into my bot side jungle. And I also saw that my Nami was in base, and my AD carry was down on bot lane. On top of that, I already flashed out, so I was actually out of this play, but then I decided to walk back in, because I wanted the Raptor camp, and I actually wanted to fight with my Nami, but my Nami didn't fight with me. So my first death was bad. So what should I have done instead? Well, since I see them here on entering here on bot side, they are probably in this area. So this is an area that I can't enter. So what can I do? Well, I can walk maybe safely towards mid lane to help defend mid lane. I could go help my AD carry on bot lane or cover for him. Or I could simply reset, go back to base, and then from base walk up towards Scuttlecrab and play towards the Rift Herald. All those 3 options would be a lot better. Which one would be the very best? I mean, covering for mid lane is probably more ideal than covering for AD carry, because my mid laner is actually in a potential 1v3 situation, whereas my AD carry is kinda just pushing in the wave all by himself, and he should be able to push it in before the enemy team rotates down there. And then otherwise, if I don't want to cover for a mid lane, I could just play for the Scuttlecrab and the Rift Herald, and that would be a better play. So that was a bad death. Then let's see, when do we die the next time? Which is about here. So here we take the red buff. We briefly see the Pyke. I then go to take my Raptor camp. I then see that the Twitch is on me with the Pyke. And it then ends up being a 1-for-1 trade. So was this a good or a bad death? Well, I ended up getting a kill, and Twitch ended up getting a kill, I believe. Or was it Pyke? No, it was Twitch. So both teams got 450 gold, because Aurelia got an assist, and Pyke got an assist. So in terms of the gold, it's actually even. Now, in the champions that got the kill, we're talking about Karthus, who scales, and Twitch, who also scales somewhat. Karthus would slightly outscale a Twitch in my opinion, so this is not necessarily a bad death, but simply going 0 gold versus 0 gold would also be completely fine, and then me simply just farming my jungle camps, so farming my Raptor camp into Crux or farming my Raptor camp into blue buff would also be completely fine. So this is not necessarily a bad death, but it's not like a really good death either. It's just a decent death when I'm playing a champion like Karthus. Now, if I didn't want to die, how could I have played it differently? Well, then I would kind of drag the Raptor camp into this bush right here, and then I would simply kill the camp right here instead of killing it out here, where they have vision on me. So that would be a way that I could avoid this death, but the second death was not all that bad. So then let's see a little bit later. Here we are in top lane with Aurelia, who's pushing. And we then Don't see anyone on the map right now, so we should be playing a little bit careful. I then greed towards walking into the red buff, and then there is a Twitch and a Pike. So is this a good or a bad death? Well, this was a bad death, because we didn't get anything out of it. So what I should have done is I should just have covered. I could easily take this Croc Camp. I could then have sat here, let my Aurelia push in the wave, and then I just sit here and I cover for my Aurelia in case that the enemy Twitch and Pike are gonna go to defend against the Aurelia. But the reason why I ended up dying was because I took the Croc Camp and then I wanted to greed for the red buff. And I can't do that because I don't have vision of anyone on the enemy team. So my third death was also bad. So if we take a good death and a bad death counter, then we have good death over here, which is 1. And then we have bad death, which is 2. So far at least. Out of the 3 deaths, we have 1 good death, or like not too bad of a death, and then we have 2 bad ones. Now, I think I don't die for a decent amount of time, which is pretty good, but then we end up dying here for a team fight. Again, what is happening? Well, we are playing towards the Drake. We see Jax on top lane, we see that our AD carry is dead, we see them in mid lane, so it wouldn't be a terrible time to set up for the Drake, because they would have to walk into us. So we end up starting the Drake. Unfortunately, Talia's not here, so it's not the very best fight we can take right now. But we want to play for the Drakes and try to play for Soul. We do end up getting the Drake. We end up dying to the Kassadin. And then we end up killing Kassadin back. So, how did the team fight go? Well, it was actually 2 for 3 in our favor, and we got the Drake. So this was completely fine for us to take this fight, since we ended up winning this team fight and we got the objective. So we are now on 2 good deaths and 2 bad deaths. So then we have another one coming up here. We are in top lane. We are just farming right now. We see them 3 people in mid lane. We just saw that our AD carry is dead, but we are in a 4v3 situation, but we are very split up as a team. And I go towards the Raptor camp. I realize that it's not up, and then I see that there's a Twitch and a Pike, and then I am just instantly dead. So, a good or a bad death? Well, obviously this was a bad death, because we again didn't gain anything from this. So, what should I have done instead? Well, I should probably have covered towards my top side, so that we could push top lane with Talia, because mid lane is already open and bot lane is already open, so there's not too much we can gain down here. So the only thing we can really gain is something up here. So I should simply have ran towards top lane, covered for my Talia, and then if the Twitch and Pike comes to fight 2v2, well, then it's at least possible for us that we can trade kills, rather than me going in 1v2 for a Raptor camp. So that was a pretty bad death as well. Then we have another fight coming up. And here we are actually about to end the game. You end up getting 1 kill. Almost getting 2 kills. We end up killing the Jarvan here. End up being hooked, but I don't really worry too much about it. Then we see the Twitch and the Kassadin going in on us. Fortunately, my last Q doesn't end up hitting. And then Aurelia also ends up dying. So, was this worth it or not? Well, probably not, because we could probably have been able to take these towers and then backed off. Or you could simply say we're just gonna take 1 Nexus tower and the inhib, and then we're gonna reset, because we don't have to end right here, right now. Because Kassadin is not close to level 16 yet, he's only level 14. And yeah, they end up getting a bunch of shutdowns, and we don't manage to end the game. So, was this a good or bad death? Well, this was also a bad death, bringing us to 4 bad deaths so far. But then we have another fight coming up, which is on Baron. End up getting the Baron buff. And here we have the Twitch. Kind of doing a lot of damage here. We end up dying to the pike, but we end up getting a kill back. So was this a good or a bad death? Well, this was a good death because it was pike who ended up getting the kill. And I actually outscaled the pike. And we already got the Baron. And we basically managed to end the game of this. So I end the game with a score of 8 kills, 7 deaths and 8 assists. 200 farm. So not the best game that I could have had. I could definitely have played a lot better. But it's not the worst game ever because I was basically ahead the entire game and I was scaling, so I did not have to win the early game. And I ended up doing the most damage in this game on my team, but Twitch outdamaged me overall. Yeah, I ended up having 3 deaths that were acceptable and then 4 bad ones. And then what I can take away from this game is that I did not respect the enemy Twitch a whole lot in this game because there was 2 times where I ended up dying to the Twitch. As well as the invade on Raptors. So my first death was the one on Raptors where I went back in. Completely unnecessary. I could definitely have avoided that one. The second one I ended up trading 1 for 1, which was okay. And then I had 2 instances where I was greeding and I did not respect the Twitch. They were both on the top side jungle. One time I wanted to get the red buff and I died. And one time I wanted to get enemy Raptors and I also died. So the main thing to take away from this game is that I need to respect a Twitch AD carry player a lot more, especially if he's ahead when I'm playing Karthus, because otherwise I just end up dying and giving the Twitch a lot more gold, and that was basically like half of my deaths that were bad, which was the result of that. And that's what you can take away from this game. So this is basically what you want to do. You basically just take a look at your game, take a look at all of your deaths, and then you try to figure out was this a good or a bad death. And if it was a good one, then you can move on. If it's a bad one, then try and figure out, well, first on, try and figure out why did you die. So what was the actual reason? Was it because you were greedy? Was it because you didn't respect your opponent? Whatever it might be. And then second thing, try and figure out, well, what should you have done instead? How could you have avoided this death? That would be the first thing. And even better, what could you have done that would have been, like, instead of just dying, because you could say I could just play really passive and then I won't die, and try and say, well, what could I have done that would give me more gold and more experience? So try and think in terms of gold and XP. How can you get the most amount of gold and XP without having a bad death? And those will typically result in you winning more games. And that's basically how I play. I try to play mostly around experience and gold, because the more items and XP that I have on my champion with my carry champion pool, the bigger the chance of me carrying the game basically I have. So that's basically the video. If you enjoyed the video, remember to leave a like. If you have any questions, then leave it in the comment section down below, and then always subscribe so you don't miss out on future YouTube videos. And I just want to say thank you for watching, and I'll see you guys in my next YouTube video or on my next live stream on Twitch.